incredible session. Oh my gosh, there were so many points where I was just like clapping my hands like a silly monkey, just so excited. Rafi, when you were talking about flipping the negative perception of procurement and then how we back that up with actionable data, communications, that's just so important. And Kate, hearing about how you were having these weekly meetings with stakeholders, talking about key suppliers and how to drive value. I mean, I can't believe it exists, right? It's a miracle. You hear about it. I actually was talking to a CPO last week that says he has weekly meetings with his CEO to discuss those key suppliers and how that they can inspire them and motivate them to innovate and work better with their existing processes. So this was awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing this gold. Before we move on, just a couple things. So I love that everyone's asking questions. Phenomenal, love it. But it looks like you're putting it in the chat and not the Q&A. So it's difficult for us to really see those questions and be able to answer them. So if you don't mind, go ahead and put that in that Q&A button. I know it's a little different. If you're used to Zoom, you're not used to seeing it, but it's right there. So yeah, I'd appreciate that so much. I think it's time to have a little fun. Not that these panels haven't been awesome, but I want to engage a little bit more with the audience. So if you don't mind, tell me where you're calling from today. Where are you joining us from? Are you in the States? Are you in the UK? Be as specific as possible. I'd love to get an idea where everybody's calling in from today. New Jersey in the house. Love it. That's awesome. See what else we got here. All right, come on, y'all. Tell me where you're coming. Long Island, nice. Detroit, New York City, nice. Wow. Boston, Poland, Germany, Philadelphia, Chicago, India. Wow. Miami, Pittsburgh. Oh, I love it. Hopefully some of you all are experiencing some sunshine today. I know I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and you know it's dark here about 8 months out of the year. We don't see the sun much, and when we do see the sun, it's like, what's that big yellow thing up in the sky? Portland, I know you feel me on that. Utah, Canada, awesome. Mexico City. Oh, gee, I'm so glad that you're able to join us. So glad that you're here. Mexico City. Got a lot of people. Ooh, Texas. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's great to have you here, G. And G, when they were talking about templates, I bet that was super interesting to you. I know we were talking about that earlier. South Africa, Indy. Nice. Nice. Well, I'm so glad that we have so many people coming from all over the world. This is amazing, just to talk about procurement and how awesome it is. And that conversation about the CEO and what to say when we actually get that opportunity to speak to them, you know, having that tip of tongue, great value in that last session. Ah, Switzerland, hello. Ooh, Paris. It's almost lunchtime, you know, thinking about food in Paris. That's pretty nice. Missouri. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so I'm super excited about this session, y'all. So Mor Cohen-Tal is our CTO, and she is our co-founder, and she's also a dear friend of mine. I think that she gets it. She is like that kind of CTO that understands sales, marketing, procurement, spend management, supply chain, and I think she has something like 8 technology patents. So doing this is what she does best. And guess what? She's going to tell us why UI and UX is so important for end user adoption. I mean, more if they can't use it, they're not going to. They're going to default to whatever is easiest, right? Whatever is available, whether it's a P card or whatever, they're going to default to whatever's easiest. So we have an awesome panel joining us today. I can't wait to hear everyone's thoughts, but we're going to talk about emerging procure tech and why we need to prioritize an awesome UI and UX to really drive that end user adoption. I'm so excited, Mor. The stage is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Katie. I'm really excited to be hosting this panel with a topic that really is very, very close to my heart. Before I kind of jump into the panel, I just wanted to take 2 seconds and thank everyone for joining us here today. I'm really excited for this event and everything we still have planned for everyone. If I were to summarize at a high level everything we heard so far, we heard Lihi mention the abysmal spend under management percentages we see across the industry today. Kay mentioned that when we don't have visibility, we don't have trusted data. And when we don't have trusted data, we fall into the garbage in, garbage out paradigm. And that is what most of our reporting and decision-making is based on. RJ talked about wasted spend and the lack of visibility into it and how it drives organizations down. Rafi talked about the importance of being proactive and allowing stakeholders to self-serve and how important that is in their ability to serve the business. In this panel, we will touch upon what I honestly believe is the only way to solve all of the above challenges. Great user experience that drives user adoption with no resistance. So without further ado, I'll let our panelists present themselves. Kirra, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kirra McElhenney. I am the manager of procurement operations at Datadog. That includes vendor management and our contracts management function.
Thank you. So we're excited to have you here with us today. Sergio.
Hello, everyone. Sergio, I had a procurement at Lightspeed, joining from Montreal.
Very excited to have you. Okay, so let's jump to our first question. We are seeing at Opstream with our customers and in the broader environment that more and more procurement organizations are investing in automation and view it as one of their most strategic goals. And we heard it from some of our experts that talked in our panels up until now. But to have automation truly be successful, it can be achieved in employee, we need user adoption, right? But to achieve user adoption, there are a few ways to go about it. One is to force people to comply. And if anyone on this chat had success with that, please raise their hand. That would be a first for me to hear. But what we find from our customers is a much more successful way to do that is having employees opt in. And for that, you need great UX. So Sergio, why don't we start with you? How heavily are you weighing user experience when evaluating procurement software today?
That became, I guess, increasingly more important in the past couple of months. Knowing the context a little bit of Lightspeed, we had strong growth via acquisition. So in total, the company has acquired 13 other companies, but since I joined and since procurement started, it has been 5 companies, give or take 400 employees on average, each one of them. Each one with their own department, each one with their ways of doing things. So getting used to just going to a different culture and company systems and whatnot, it was difficult. The low adoption of just going to the system was complicated at the beginning, but it became a viral thing. And one of my former managers said the growth of the procurement department within Lightspeed was made us the victims of our own success. We just showed value at one point. So when somebody had a contract to deal with or a new vendor to deal with, there were parts of that process that they liked back in the days, But then moving forward, like they were like, I don't like to do the paperwork, I don't like to do the compliance, I don't like to do the contract aspect of it, or the financing, making on the onboarding was in place. We were able to show value of, we can take that away from you. You just have to like have a compromise on the end of the process. So you start the workflow at the beginning, you get things delivered faster, and you get to enjoy the parts that you like, which is having the system quicker, like getting to talk with the vendors, getting deployed, getting a proof of concept right away. So that helped out, but it was a continuous process. Just like show the value, and people are going to just come back to it, and it's just going to spread the word.
Show the value. I love that, right? Having people opt in because they see the value of what it is that you're driving. I think Kay mentioned that as well. How important it is to communicate constantly. So I love that. Kirra, how about you?
So we place a lot of emphasis on how happy our stakeholders are. So we consider the people buying on behalf of Datadog as our customers. So we've just started sending out surveys, which was kind of shocking to see the responses. And we took those survey results, aggregated them, and made changes and communicated those changes. Some things we were able to do really quickly. Some things we realized that we needed new systems or tools in place. So we used that as support for our planning. But the biggest thing that we see is if something's too complicated to use, then they're gonna go everywhere other than to where they're supposed to. So
Yes, it's impossible to force them to comply with the process unless it's something that they found intuitive to do. I love the survey idea and that concept, right? I mean, when building products, which is the bread and butter of what I do, you always have to be connected to your customer to understand what they're trying to achieve and to simplify it for them. And you basically took the same approach to procurement. I love it. Is there any tidbit or insight that you would love to share with us from these surveys? Something that maybe wasn't obvious to you that you saw from the survey, and maybe you thought, oh, wow, I didn't know that they think that. Or
one of the biggest things I saw was that, and this is obvious, not everybody learns in the same way. So what is working for some people may not work for others. So that helped us, instead of just, having a long process document to explain how to use a system, we started opening office hours. We offered training for specific groups, Q&As, flow charts. That's my favorite thing, because once again, not everybody learns the same way. So I found that kind of catering to our stakeholders and how they learn best has been a lot more helpful for adoption.
I love that. And it brings us back to that word communication, right? That keeps coming back today. Very interesting. Thank you. And I think that is a perfect lead to our next question, so as I work closely with our customers, one of the things that I learned is that measuring user adoption is key. Right. And it could be through surveys, it could be through understanding the spend under management and finding all these things that come and fight us when we're already forced to spend them. Right. So how do you measure the success of user adoption within your organization today? How do you take a look at that and see where you are in the journey to try and capture 100% of the spend under management and everyone following the process?
Who first?
Sorry. Kirra, let's start with you. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'd say this may not be the most, it's not necessarily a metric, but the less people are complaining, the less questions that we're getting, and the less requests or contracts that are signed outside of going to procurement, that's how we kind of measure that we're going in the right direction. If we don't have fires to put out because somebody agreed to something that they shouldn't have before going through the appropriate measures, we're on a good track.
No fires and less complaints sounds like a recipe to a healthy life.
Absolutely.
Sergio.
kind of similar to what Kirra just said, but on our flow, I guess, or like procure to pay entire process, we have different stakeholders that measure it differently. So legal had their own perspective of like how many contracts were just signed outside the authority of somebody who was doing that. So we can pinpoint it to somebody not following the process. So there you go, right away, somebody who didn't follow the adoption. But for us, the key metric that we take is within the process that we built at Lightspeed, we made sure that also accounts payable, so everything in the invoicing and paying our suppliers was taken to within the procurement process. So when they reach the point where a vendor sends them an invoice, they easily can track whether or not it has a purchase order, and that purchase order can be tracked down to a ticketing system where all the approvals are there and they follow the due process or the due diligence within procurement. That is more or less the metric that we keep. So any invoices and mostly the spend that we get, that was done rogue. So our accounts payable team is not necessarily aware of all the vendors and all the contracts. So like when an invoice comes in, they need to have our guidance to know, like, is this legitimate? Am I okay to pay it? So whenever they flag something as like, we don't recognize it, we cannot track it, then we know exactly if the adoption is going well or not. So that's something we track on a weekly basis, but work in progress as well.
Absolutely. This is a journey, and we're constantly need to improve. We have a question from the audience. Kirra, I think that is for you. So how do you deploy the surveys so that you get better survey response rates?
Well, survey response rate, we have to do a lot of follow-up, honestly. We've used basically just email, and also we have a procurement Slack channel that anybody who is part of our procurement purchasing process, if they've ever purchased something, they can be in that channel. So just a lot of follow-up, honestly. The company's growing so quickly that we might send something out and then 2 days later we have 100 more people join. So I think it's just consistency and following up. But we sent it out by email, by the way.
Yeah, and that's amazing. One additional aspect, if I could add, that I've learned from experience when sending surveys like that, is that sometimes a lack of response is also a signal. People comment on surveys when they feel strongly one way or the other. When they hate your procurement process and you send a survey out, you will hear their voices. Don't worry about it. But when things are okay, then just might skip. So I would even say that response rate is a great metric of how well you're doing. Okay, so we talked about user adoption. We talked about how we measure it. What are some of the common challenges that you're faced when implementing new procurement systems or processes, and how can we overcome that to ensure user adoption? Sergio, let's start with you. Okay, sorry about that. I'll get used to it.
I guess it's just mostly the entire debate about change management, just making sure that people are not reluctant to change. I try to and this is more on the personal / professional side, I try to simplify very complex problems into metaphors that make sense. And in that case, I always put things into perspective. So like when somebody's resisting the change, we try to pinpoint like why they do it. But I most of the time just try to put it in a simple way, saying like if somebody's working at a company A today, and if for some reason in a year from now they go to a different company, they accept the job offer, and they have a different email system. They don't use Gmail anymore, Workspace, but they use Outlook. They're not going to quit their job immediately because they're not okay with the systems. It's a matter of like, they're okay adapting under certain circumstances. It's just, we all have to be on this boat together. That is one point that we try to simplify and minimize the problem, being like, okay, it's going to become more complicated. There's benefits in the end. But that's it. It's on a case by case, honestly. Some people are just not very keen to adding more time and delays to their processes, and some people are happy to it. So there's no one solution fits all, unfortunately. But people are receptive if you go and talk to them. I think the previous panelists also mentioned about that. You have to communicate and show that you care. That is something that we take to heart, being like, they have an objective as well. We want to make sure that we have something in common.
Love that. Kirra.
Yeah, so I mean, most people don't like change, right? Even if it's a good change, we're going to push back. You know, we really try to communicate why we're making the change and just reiterate that we're almost always doing it to protect the company and to make the process easier. You know, even if we, like I said, we do process documentation, even if we have all of that, a lot of people just like to dive in and then complain whenever they hit a roadblock. And so we've tried to adapt in that way. You know, whenever we do user acceptance testing, we usually invite our most vocal stakeholders to participate. And that is, it's kind of a twofold thing. They're not shy about telling us what they like and what they don't like, but because they're so vocal, they'll also tell everybody else when they do like it. So that's really helpful. And I'd say we have almost 24/7 access to this procurement help Slack channel that anybody can ask a question, and somebody from my team or accounts payable can answer a question in 5 minutes or less. And then we open up our virtual office doors for questions at any time.
I love this. If I kind of summarize both of your answers, we're talking about communication and the importance of explaining why we do what we do. And I think Kay outlined it very well in the previous panel as well, right? When we tell people why we're doing what we're doing, I'm not asking you to use our NDA template because I want to be annoying. I'm doing it because there's a reason behind it. I'm asking about SOC 2 certificates because there's an actual risk to our business if we don't follow through it. And, you know, I always like to remind people that free isn't risk-free, right? You may have something, and vendors, oh my God, we err on that so many times from the other side, thinking that the fact that we're giving, you know, a free trial or something for free, then it means no process is required and we can throw everything else out the door, right? And we all know that's not the truth, but we have to explain to people why budget is not the only thing they need to worry about, right? And that explanation and pulling people in, I think helps them be better corporate citizens. And we see it within our customers as well, that when we add into the intake process these notes and explanations about why all these different things are important, we see a significantly higher completion rate and adoption, and that's very important. And then the second thing you mentioned, Kirra, is, I'll summarizing, it's letting the vocal people air out their concern, let some of the steam out so it doesn't, you know, explode. And then being accessible, being reachable, right? Not being, you know, stuck in an office behind a door somewhere that no one knows how to reach you, right? It's just being personable, being there, being available. Slack is, of course, amazing for that. But you both are right. No one likes change. And the same is true with procurement systems, because even though, and I'm going to be extreme here and say, everyone hates current processes, right? And if anyone likes them, please chime in the chat. But everyone hates current processes. No one likes the process that they have in the vast majority of traditional systems. But when we offer a new approach, we still see that resistance to change. And I think you really outlined how to kind of help overcome that, and how to help organizations really embrace the new systems and processes that they have. But this resistance to change may result in low adoption. Kirra, like you mentioned, vocal people air out their concerns, and sometimes that can be infectious, right? So how do you manage low user adoption risk when you're considering bringing in a new system, a new process, a new solution?
I can answer that.
Kirra, yes, go. I promise I'd be better.
It sounds a bit stern, but in addition to us providing a service for the people in our company, we are also we're kind of the rule enforcers as well. So at the end of the day, if users are not adopting the new systems, we can't help them, and we can't necessarily send things for signature. We have to push back. So if there is an opportunity to do like a push rollout of a system, that's always preferable, as far as just not giving them a choice. They have to use the new system. But other than that, it's really just kind of sometimes a gentle redirect and sometimes a stern redirect, saying, if you're not going to go through this process, you're not going to be able to purchase what you want to purchase. It won't happen. Sorry.
Sergio.
That is definitely the blunt answer, and like it's the reality. Like at one point of the process, if they don't follow it, it doesn't happen. But one approach that we took here is like we have ambassadors, and it's not necessarily one random person in every team, but like throughout the entire chain of the procurement process, they're gonna hit one bump road that is not gonna be procurement. If they go to a point in which like they need to get a signature, they might try to bypass this and they go to the legal department. Everybody in legal is aware of it, so they're going to be like, you go through procurement, they're like, okay, I can skip them, I have to go back and start the process. Same thing when they want to go and actually try to pay something, even if they don't need a signature, they just need to go to a portal and like buy something with a credit card. We made sure to have control over all the credit cards with accounts payable and finance at the beginning of the process, so nobody actually has a credit card that they can use unless it's their personal card. But if they try to expend it afterwards and say like, hi, I just bought a software here, like 3 licenses, accounts payable is going to refuse immediately, and that money goes to the employee, but never going to get back. So we try to find like people who are aware of the process, who are our allies, and they just like revert them back every single time. As in, like, you talk to procurement, in different departments, accounts payable, financing, legal, IT, and security as well. None of them want to approve anything. It's more workload for them, and then they become accomplices on the risk, saying like, I'm not approving this, like I'm not really sure if it's fine. So they just want to make sure everything is properly done. So that helps us out. And obviously the thing of like
ambassadors and accomplices. Yeah. Love it. Ambassadors and accomplices. I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to give you credit for the first 2 times, but then I'm just going to pretend it's mine. So we talked a lot about user adoption and the importance of it within procurement systems. But within procurement, we're also responsible for all the tools that come into the system, right? And the same is true for tools across the board, right? At least I can tell you that in development, right, if we're buying a ticketing system, but everyone goes around it, right? Or if you're buying a test automation platform and people are not using it, then we're not seeing the value, right? And yes, there are some systems that are built for a single user, but a lot of these systems that come through procurement, that run through it, right? Their success, you can build the best ROI deck that you can, but if no one uses the system, you don't get any of that ROI. So let's talk a little bit about user adoption for tools outside of procurement systems. And without specifying any specific company, can you share an example of a great user experience and why it was so great, and the success that drove within the organization for that platform? Sergio, yes.
I'm trying to guess. Okay, without naming specifics, I think something that like go-to-market teams and different companies, like back in my past and also on Lightspeed, do take into attention is like the perception that like clients have of them, the NPS scores. One thing and one system that actually did make a difference was like the support channels. So like I've seen a transition between how the level of satisfactions are higher in customers that don't have necessarily to deal with somebody on the line, and they can just do it automated just on a chat. That was true in telecommunications when I was working there, and that became an objective with the entire infrastructure and like the product team to like foster the supports team like system. So like it can be mostly on chat and less on the human aspect of it, unless it was just a last resource and they had to go that. Internally, I think that has also like a valid point. Just like Kirra at Datadog, we also have a Slack channel that allows people to just like ask the questions whenever they want, and they feel like, oh, it's pretty much automated. That I think has a very, very valid impact. And so like systems that are like mostly based on like probably what they were mentioning at the beginning, AI as well, and just pure like less interaction with somebody and with like more diligent responses based on past experiences, that helps a lot. Like people feel satisfied because the answers probably were asked by the answers were there by somebody who asked the questions like maybe 2 months ago, maybe 2 years ago. So capturing that within the context of procurement, I think that's a win in the future. Just not there yet to have a chat that does it, but soon.
Kirra.
Yeah, we've tried the same thing here at Datadog, so I'd love to chat with you about your success or pitfalls. I'd say the best user experiences are ones where it's a simple rollout, a short implementation time, and that the interface is simple and easy to use, easy to navigate. You know, whether it's procurement, whether it's anything else, having a busy user interface is frustrating for everybody. So I'd say that's probably it, to simplify it.
I love these answers. And I have to harp on the NPS score piece of it because it's such a strong metric, NPS score, but it's also extremely generic, right? I mean, you have an NPS score that's maybe driven 100% by, or 90% by Fortune 500 companies, but you at Datadog as an example, right? You're a fast-growing tech company that has so many different characteristics, and what works for you might not work for them. And so my biggest challenge in the industry of tracking these metrics is that NPS score, yes, there's something so strong about that metric, but it's also extremely generic. And one of the things that we're working on at Opstream is the ability to give you visibility into the internal NPS score of all of these things that are coming up for renewal. And I think that could really change the conversation that organizations are having around renewals to be significantly more data-driven. And we see that being very successful within our customers. So I loved that point. So we established that user experience is extremely important for user adoption. That's true for procurement systems. It's true for systems outside of procurement for every aspect of the business. So how do you ensure within the process you have today that all the tools that are brought in to the organization have a good user experience? And yes, we touched upon the NPS score piece, but how do you make sure that it's the right fit for your organization and the users are going to adopt it? So that you do see the value. Kirra, yeah.
One of the first things that we do for especially bigger purchases is we're reaching out to our counterparts at other companies, procurement people in other companies that have used the tool already, to kind of see what they have to say, what their adoption rate has looked like, if they're finding value. That's been a really valuable tool that we can use when evaluating. I'd also, obviously looking for ease of like customization, and we like a good trial phase, we want to try it before we buy it. So
before you buy, love it. Sergio.
To me, something, obviously the referrals as well. And I had this conversation yesterday with a colleague. We do the referrals, like sometimes the vendors come to us and say like, okay, here's one of our best clients. They're there to make the company shine. So that does happen as well. But just going to peers, that definitely is a thing. But more on the technical end, I think something that is very important right now, if you want to bring something that is more integrated and unified, is how vast or how easy it is to integrate APIs of that system over to other systems that we have internally. If they're already out of the box and we don't have to develop and we don't have to wait, like it's in development, it's going to be done this year. Like we don't know if they're talking calendar year, fiscal year, or Mayan calendar year. So that is something that we're not necessarily fully aware, but if you have a list of we've worked with these suppliers also, and like the API is right there. You can customize it however you want. That brings more openness from different stakeholders in the company because they feel like there's more potential to like use this tool, and they feel like excited, saying like, okay, I'm already using, I don't know, let's say a monday.com kind of thing. And they're like, oh, this integrates with monday.com, and I have more of my dashboards there. Like it's easier, and it's, I think, a better sale when you have something that you know kind of fits within the puzzle within each company, and everybody's different. So the more APIs you have and the more integrations improvement, I think adds more value in the short term than the referrals, because the referrals, if we don't have the network of people to ask to, and we just have the clients that the suppliers send us, it's going to be always like a lump-sided kind of view of things.
I absolutely love that, because an average organization of 1,000 employees has on average 600 software tools today. 600. If they don't integrate with each other and they don't work together to help the organization achieve their goals, it's impossible, right? You can't expect people to actually use an interface with 600 different tools, right? So the ability of those to work together through an API is extremely important. And I'm going to pretend I didn't notice the comment about vague roadmap dates hiding in the corner here as a past product manager. But thank you, Kirra, Sergio. It was absolutely a pleasure. You guys were extremely insightful. Thank you. And Katie, right back to you.